after waking up with a jolt. The girl laid in bed a few seconds longer, reaching over to switch on her bedside lamp. She tried to remember exactly what had stolen her sweet slumber away. When she called on the brunette swing her legs over the side of the bed and heaved herself up, checking the time on her phone. She snorted when she saw it was midnight with watching her, knowing what sleep would only await her. She left her bedroom for the kitchen, a good cup of coffee in her mind. As she passed by her front door, a chill spread like liquid fire down her spine. It's only winter, she told herself, focusing again on the coffee plan. Measuring out scoops water and preparing her cup gave her a cupid. But as the dark liquid boiled, she had nothing left to keep her mind from wandering off. The chill returned, and she couldn't help but glance behind her to the front door. It stood very innocently unarched, just like always. The deadbolt was still in place and she called, so nothing amiss with it. Turning back to her coffee, she did her best to forget about the feeling. With her cup in hand, she started back towards her bedroom. As she walked by the front door, it had said what a quick glance out of a peephole would help calm her restless mind. The chill worsened with each step she took towards the door, and forced her away from the safety and warmth of her blankets. She pressed her empty hand against the cold metal door and took a deep breath before leading her ear to the peephole. At first, she called only an inky blackness and somehow seemed to swirl in itself. When she blinked in surprise, the void melted away. She wished it hadn't in its place, where it stood what she called only Quest was once a man. The limbs were long and inhumanly awkward, with bulky joints branching off into several arms. Not unlike the branches of a tree, the creature was dragging in a black side, somehow making the thing more nightmarish to hear. The icing on the proverbial cake. However, was that pasted, as the hellish thing's face. It was a touch her mind blurred the ghastly visage to spare itself for her snug and horror. She shoved herself away from the door with the hand still pressed against it. The scalding mug of coffee filled the liquid burning her bare legs. The liquid burning her bare legs as she fell backwards and tried to crawl away from the door. She knew somehow that her mind hadn't been playing tricks on her. As she walked away from the door, she watched as tendrils as black as the void. She first saw snaky around throat the cracks. The girl was trapped between the instinctive and the gut feeling to not turn her back on the door. When the door jolted, we argued to flee or come here, and she slipped in the burning liquid as she tried to make it back to her room. She knew deep down that she was trapping herself in a corner, but she had to get away from the door. The girl was halfway down the hallway when she heard the previously locked door creak open. She screamed and slipped into a well, cracking her chin on it and stunning her. Afterward, where it was only blackness. Nicole? A warm male voice snapped the woman out of a trance. As she turned around, she was met by one of her sister's doctors. She nodded, not sure if she should say anything, or even if she could find her voice if she did have something to say. That morning, she had gotten an urgent phone call from this hospital, saying with her sister. Lindsay was wary, before we had even let her see her. The doctors had pulled her off to the side and insisted what we talk to her about what might have happened. Phrases like self-inflicted and assault had been thrown around, and Nicole left him unreal. She still hadn't fully understood what we had been saying until she saw Lindsay with her own eyes. Her little sister had a bandage wrapped around her head, covering both of her ears, as well as her ears. We said it was to keep her now dead in its eyes from drying out and to try to keep infection out of the wounds Lindsay had made to her ears. When doctors had greased wet at her, she or someone else had jammed a pencil into them to keep her off balance or to defend herself against something. Where was the mix of first and second degree burns on her hands, legs and feet, from what was a summit to be were coffee. Her neck bores found slipped all over the entry to her. To be the coffee here, neck bores found slipped all over the entry to her apartment. As Nicole walked into her sister's hospital room the first time, she thought she had speed with silhouette of a man in the window. What she knew was impossible. Her sister's room was only tried story of the hospital. The Scary Crow is a scary story about a farmer who builds the scariest and most hideous of all scary crows to take care of his farm. There was an old farmer in Arizona who owned the best farm in the area. Everybody said his crops were the best and people come from all over to buy their goods from him. Whenever people asked him how he was able to grow good quality crops, the old farmer would say it was all down to his scarecrow. "What old scarecrow is the one I have to think," said the farmer. "He makes sure no crows or critters or pests come near my crops." The old farmer had built the scarecrow himself, and it was a fearsome sight. He spent moments working on it to make it as scary as possible. He knew how important it was to keep pests away from his crops. So he gave it arms that stretched out about 6 feet and big long legs what made it as tall as a tree. But the scariest thing about this scarecrow was its head. The farmer carried it himself out of a huge pumpkin. He spent countless days and nights perfecting his design until it was perfect. The scarecrow's face and hair was so grotesque and ugly that even he was something scary to look at it. But it was very effective, scaring away every rodent and bird that ventured near. The neck-boring farm was owned by 2 young men who were brothers named Josh and Garl. They were lazy and never did much work around the farm, which resulted in their crops being bad. They were jealous of the old farmers, such as and were plotting against him. If they could drive him out of the business, they could take over his farm and make more money. So one night, the brothers decided to sneak onto the old farmer's land. They stole his prized scarecrow and brought it back to their own house, where they stuffed and into an old closet, so nobody would ever find it. The next day the farmer woke up to find his hideous scarecrow missing and all his crops being eaten by rats and crows. He felt to his knees and cried, knowing what his farm would soon be out of business. Meanwhile, the brothers, Josh and Garl, were watching from their own property and couldn't help laughing out loud when they saw the old man's tears of grief. Hearing the laughter, the old farmer came over and asked them if they knew what happened to his scarecrow. The brothers looked at him right in the eye and said they had no idea where his precious scarecrow might be. "But you go out of business and have to sell my farm if I can't find my scarecrow," said the farmer. Josh just laughed in his face, saying, "Well, just your touch luck, isn't it?" "Sucks to be you," giggled Geralt. The old farmer walked slowly back to his house, his head hanging down and defeated and depressing. One night as Josh and Geralt had trouble sleeping, not because we felt any remorse, but because they couldn't get the image of the scarecrow's horrible twisted face out of their minds. They did say they would never be able to sleep as long as that ugly pumpkin head was in their house, so we got up and dragged the scarecrow out of the closet. Geralt took a sable but and smashed the scarecrow head to pieces, until what was left was little bits of pumpkin strewn around the floor. The brothers swept up the pumpkin head, ashes and threw them in the trash when we went back to bed and very soon fast asleep. having puddled doubts of a disgusting scarecrow face out of their heads, sometime after midnight. Josh and Gerald were walking by with sounds of a scratching and clawing at their bedroom door. "Did you forget to put the dog out?" asked Gerald sleepily. "We don't have a dog," stammered Josh. Suddenly the bedroom door burst open and a solitary long stare, arms naked in through the opening. When a second arm thrashed around, followed by two long stick legs. The two brothers were frozen in fear and could only look with horror as the headless scarecrow body rose up on its long stick legs, and its long arms reached out for them in the darkness. Garl left a cold, sinewy straw claw closely around his ankle and screamed as loud as he could. He begged his brother Josh to help him. But Josh was already running out of the bedroom. Fleeing in terror, he ran down the hallway, crashed through the front door, and out onto the moonlit road. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, panting and at the top of his voice. As he passed his neighbor's house, he saw the old farmer standing at his gate. In the moonlight, he could see the farmer just staring at him with a strange smile on his face. Josh kept running, his bare feet slapping against the rough gravel road. He glanced back over his shoulder and saw something was scaring him to his very soul. He saw a scarecrow running along the road close behind him. It was gaining on him, coming closer and closer. And what wasn't all he saw? He noticed what the scarecrow had. A brand new head, and it looked a lot like Garl.